Hello, adventurer. It's good to see you. You have made it to the morning grind.
Welcome, welcome.
It's the live stream at the beginning of the Geekverse, where we talk about all types of topics in geekdom, gaming, and fantasy, with an emphasis on being constructive and creating the things that we want to exist in the world.
It's all on the grind, Sizemore. Can't be too fine, can't be too coarse.
That's exactly right. There are a lot of adventures to be had today. Dungeons to explore and monsters to slay, and who knows what a random encounter might send our way. That's why we have to prepare. So settle in now for the morning grind with your favorite beverage in hand.
Tea? Or maybe something a little stronger. I've got a few bottles of the old Wynyard left.
Whatever you want. Pull up a chair.
Dude.
If you're feeling fancy, how about a cappuccino? Or a frappuccino? Or how about an espresso?
Just tea, thank you.
Sounds good to me, Gandalf. Whatever you want. I'm just glad you're here.
Everyone is welcome. You can just watch if you want. You don't have to worship anything you don't want to worship.
Thank you, Mike. But be forewarned.
Sometimes we get really strange characters around here.
Wait, what's that you say? Why can't you come and be a part of the stream?
My wife would disown me.
Oh no, I bet she'll be fine with it. Come on in.
Am I scared for my safety? No.
What are we supposed to do?
Everybody do the secret handshake.
Secret cultist handshake.
Oh, now do wizards who love each other.
This, my friend, is a science.
I still don't have gills, but it's fine.
It's all on the grind, son. Can't be too fine, can't be too coarse.
Dude, this would be a sick place to bring the band.
Indeed it would be, Dave. It really would. I'm seeing more people coming in. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Oh, look, here's someone new.
Is this the cultist meetup?
Yes it is.
Come to hang out? Please accept me. I have nothing else.
Okay, we accept you. Everyone's welcome here.
Brought some snacks.
Well, that makes things even better.
You want some coffee? I don't drink coffee. You sure? It's cultist coffee. What makes it cultist coffee? I'm a cultist and I'm drinking it. Oh. Then I'll have some.
What exactly is going on here?
I'm seeing more people coming in. Welcome, welcome. It's so great to have you. Oh, and look, here comes another stranger.
Can we help you?
Yes, fellow cultists. I could really use some food.
Oh yeah? Welcome. We have donuts.
Oh, it's me. I'm glad I'm here. I'm sure you have a few questions for me, though.
What's your name? Who do you work for? What god do you worship?
Great questions, Rob.
I'm Steve King, and I worship Nyarlathotep.
No, not really. I'm just Heath, and I won't be worshiping anything this morning. But I will be your host. Welcome to the office. We're going to have a great time. I've got my coffee ready, because now it's time for the morning grind.
If you could become a fish, that would be amazing. Then I could command you with my mental fish powers.
Oh, good morning, everybody. Good morning. Oh, I knew it was going to be brutal today. This morning, last night. I looked at the clock last night, and it was 2:30 in the morning. I didn't even realize that. I know, unless I'm talking to Doug. I don't typically stay up that late anymore, but my sleep schedule has been out of whack. So I've been working, trying to get the Goodnight Sword Indiegogo ready. I reviewed that. We're ready on that page to launch on Tuesday. And then I'm still trying to get stuff ready for the Christmas story. There's a lot of work over there. I went through, I know James is in the comments here. So I've made another round of another draft based on all of James' comments. I really appreciate it. James and Brianna's comments and my brother's comments. So I'm on draft 3, cleaned up a few typos I saw, and then made adjustments based on this actual story part of it based on everybody's feedback. And then just about having the cover that can go out as a sample ready. It's basically the same kind of thing. I'm going to have somebody else work on it before before it's actually printed, but I've got it to a state where it's good enough to be shown on social media. So be able to start gathering some, going ahead and putting it out, perhaps gathering some interest in it, and then got to build out that Kickstarter page. So I just knew when I looked, I don't know what happened last night. When I looked at the clock, I went, oh, see what time it is. Oh my God, 2:30 in the morning. So I do have, so here's the Good Night Sword. Sign up if you are new here or you're just coming in and you don't have a copy of Good Night Sword. The complete ebook is right here at this sign up page. I am very, very, very close. In fact, I might even have been pushed over the mark this morning. I haven't looked at my list this morning, but we may have just hit 500 people who signed up and to get the ebook. So that's fantastic. Let's see. So I was hoping to get 500 people before the Indiegogo goes live. So we'll see here. But there we go. So and then I'm going to draw. We'll draw here on the Morning Grind on Tuesday. We'll launch Good Night Sword on Indiegogo and also draw for a free hard copy book. So not only do you get the ebook right there, but then we'll draw on the Morning Grind and send somebody a free book. All right. Good morning, James. Good morning, James. We've got Multiverse is here. We've got Sable. Gang's all here. We've got Stray. Everybody. You know, I have not been to a grocery store. My kitchen's gotten out of hand again. I got to fix that this afternoon. I'm having to grind up coffee. I've got coffee beans here. All I've got is coffee beans. Fortunately, I have a grinder. So it's like when I go, oh man, I got to get coffee for the morning grind. I also then have to go and grind up coffee. I don't do coffee. Well, hot chocolate is a great go-to. Yeah, Discord server. Thank you, Stray. Please do come on in to the Discord server. Good morning, Zero. All right, so it really is. Yep, this is actually the morning grind. We've got the morning grind this morning in a technical way. All right, what else is going on? Do I need to say? I'm chomping at the bit to get going creatively again and start writing again. We're like officially halfway through October, right? So we got 2 weeks, basically 2 weeks until November 1st. November 1st is an important day because it's All Saints Day. So I typically, it's like traditional for me to try to write it's traditional for me to try to write Theophany on All Saints Day. So that's not going to have this time. I'm not going to be able to do it this time because I'm working on Rabivania. But all right. Let's see what else. I have not Multiverse. Like or your socks will betray you. Yes. Hey, all right, let's go over here and well, yeah, it's an important date. I always like All Saints Day because it's just thematically it's nice. So I was trying to remember, and it's interesting that NaNoWriMo starts on All Saints Day. So we'll have to at least be cognizant of that when we start here. All right, let's go over here to The War of Art. The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. So everybody got your coffee ready or your hot cocoa or your shot of whiskey or whatever it is you need this morning. I've got my actual grind this morning. So here we go. Let's take 2 deep breaths, complete inhales, complete exhales, and then take a sip of your favorite beverage. Here we go. And sip. That's good. The whiskey. Yeah, that's what I forgot. All right. So let's see here. Going over to The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield for our morning reading. What a writer's day feels like. I wake up with a gnawing sensation of dissatisfaction. Already I feel fear. Already the loved ones around me are starting to fade. I interact. I'm present, but I'm not. I'm thinking about the work. I've already consigned that to the muse. What I'm aware of is resistance. I feel it in my guts. I afford it the utmost respect because I know it can defeat me on any given day as easily as the need for a drink can overcome an alcoholic. I go through the chores, the correspondence, the obligations of daily life. Again, I'm there, but not really. The clock is running in my head. I know I can indulge in daily crap for a little while, but I must cut it off when the bell rings. I'm keenly aware of the principle of priority, which states A, you must know the difference between what is urgent and what is important, and B, you must do what is important first. What's important is the work. That's the game I have to suit up for. That's the field on which I have to leave everything I've got. Do I really believe that my work is crucial to the planet's survival? Of course not. But it's important to me as catching the mouse is to the hawk circling outside my window. He's hungry. He needs a kill. So do I. I've done my chores now. It's time. I say my prayer and head out on the hunt. The sun isn't up yet. It's cold. The fields are sopping. Brambles scratch my ankles. Branches snap back in my face. The hill is a son of a bitch, but what can you do? Set one foot in front of the other and keep climbing. An hour passes. I'm warmer now. The pace has got my blood going. The years have taught me one skill, how to be miserable. I know how to shut up and keep humping. This is a great asset because it's human, the proper role for a mortal. It does not offend the gods, but elicits their intercession. My bitching self is receding now. The instincts are taking over. Another hour passes. I turn the corner of a thicket, and there it is. The nice fat hair I knew would show up if I just kept plugging. Home from the hill, I thank the immortals and offer up their portion of the kill. They brought it to me. They deserve their share. I am grateful. I joke with my kids beside the fire. They're happy. The old man has brought home the bacon. The old lady's happy. She's cooking it up. I'm happy. I've earned my keep on the planet, at least for this day. Resistance is not a factor now. I don't think of the hunt and I don't think of the office. The tension drains from my neck and back. What I feel and say and do this night will not be coming from any disowned or unresolved part of me, or any part corrupted by resistance. I go to sleep content, but my final thought is that of resistance. I will wake up with it tomorrow. I'm already steeling myself. I like this. And for a long time, when other things are in your way of doing your work, when there are actually things that are stopping you from doing stuff and working on what you really want to work on, that sucks. I feel like I've been fighting for years in order to actually get to work on the things that I want to work on. James says, I constantly tell coworkers, don't let it become important. Don't let it become important only when it's urgent. Ah, yes, don't let it become important only when it's urgent. I say that to my project managers and my service managers. I can't stress enough how crippling it can be when you wait to perform the important tasks only when they are urgent. Yeah, yes, I have that happen. What an incredibly important chapter this was for me to read. The validation was incalculable. Resistance kills. I miss Robin Williams and Chris Cornell the most. I read that book a while back ago. I was not as impressed with it as I think other people are. Obviously, it's hugely important and meaningful, but I was less impressed with it than I think other people. Hey, let's do how to be miserable. Yes, let's do how to be miserable. How to be miserable. In my younger days, dodging the draft, I somehow wound up in the Marine Corps. There's a myth that Marine training turns baby-faced recruits into bloodthirsty killers. Trust me, the Marine Corps is not that efficient. What it does teach, however, is a lot more useful. The Marine Corps teaches you how to be miserable. This is invaluable for an artist. Marines love to be miserable. Marines derive a perverse satisfaction in having colder chow, crappier equipment, and higher casualty rates than any other outfit of dog faces, swab jockeys, or flyboys, all whom they despise. Why? Because these candy asses don't know how to be miserable. The artist committing himself to his calling has volunteered for hell, whether he knows it or not. He will be dining for the duration on a diet of isolation, rejection, self-doubt, despair, ridicule, contempt, and humiliation. The artist must be like that Marine. He has to know how to be miserable. He has to love being miserable. he has to take pride in being more miserable than any soldier or swabby or jet jockey, because this is war, baby, and war is hell. Multiverse says all the 90s self-help books are out of fashion. The kids get offended when their objections are overcome. James says the Army teaches you how to be miserable, while the Marine Corps teaches you how to love it. All right, let's go over here to... Oh, where's my book? I am not ready this morning. Where's my book? Well, just one second. Oh, right here. All right, let's go. Let's bring up the auxiliary camera. And I got to clean my desk again. All right, so we are taking a look at the Screenwriter's Bible. This is in preparation for NaNoWriMo. And it's a book that I meant to have read a while back ago. It's one of the very first ones that I got. And it was one of the first ones that Cameron recommended. And he used it to write his first screenplay. And I thought I had been further in it than I had. Apparently, I got started with it, just barely got started with it, and then hadn't actually finished it. We're going to go through this entire book because there's stuff on formatting and things like that probably we do not need. But, it looks like a workbook as well for the script. So there's a lot in here, but we're taking a look at the story part and the story structure part. Sable says, the two major things outside the urgent, important quadrangle that I remember first learning in 7 Habits was sharpen the saw. I remember that chapter sharpen the saw as well. And you can't care more about people than they care about themselves. They've both been valuable in life since. Maybe that's one I need to go back to. I was reading several books, in that vein at the time, and that one, for some reason, wasn't as impressive to me. Maybe it would be today. Variations on the action and emotional tracks. Okay, so we were just talking about, this thing that he's calling both the action and the emotional track, which is a lot like, I think, it's not nearly as detailed here, but it's kind of what Drake is talking about when he's talking about the physical elements of your story being the plot, and then there's an invisible element as well, which is your theme. And that sounded like what we were talking about here with the action part of the story and the emotional part of the story. So variation on the action and emotional tracks. In Back to the Future, the outside story plot, as you would expect, is action oriented. It's driven by Marty's goal to get back to the future. So far, so good. The inside story plot, however, is driven not by a need, but by a second relationship goal. Marty wants to get his mom and dad back together again. This results in twin crises at the end of the story, side by side. First, can Marty get his parents to kiss before he disappears into oblivion? Is this the emotional story built around a relationship? Once it's resolved, Marty races to the dance to the action story. From the dance to the action story, can Marty in the DeLorean hit the wire at the same moment that lightning strikes the tower? Oh, yeah. Stray says, I got Brianna's book in the mail yesterday, City of Reckoning. It's a thick one. It is. And God, I have not been up in the morning reading because I've screwed up my sleeping schedule. James says, when I read the 7 Habits, I was already doing most of the behaviors just from experience. It's certainly worth a read. Okay, so is there an inner need in this movie? Yes. Marty needs a better family, and that's just what he gets in the end. In The Sixth Sense, the two characters go through a mutual healing. Dr. Malcolm Crowe wants to help Cole, but he needs to communicate with his wife and accept a separation from her. His backstory in the first scene of the film, he is shot by a former patient. His flaw is that, like other dead people in the film, he sees only what he wants to see. He achieves his goal of helping Cole and meets his need by communicating with his wife and seeing the truth. Cole wants to stop being scared of dead people, but his need is to communicate with them and also with his mother. Cole's flaw is that he won't share his secret with his mother for fear she'll think he's a freak. In this case, his flaw is not motivated by a specific backstory. What's interesting is that Cole's goal is achieved by satisfying the need. In other words, once he communicates with the ghosts, he's no longer afraid of them. We'll discuss this story in more depth in this chapter on meaning. Moonstruck. Loretta's goal is to marry by the book. This relationship goal is represented by Danny. She was married once before and is unlucky because he didn't do it right. So this time, Danny, you've got to have a ring and get on your knees and propose, and we're going to a priest. I don't know this one. She's going to do marriage by the book. Loretta needs to marry for love. This is represented by Ronnie. This is not fully in her consciousness until she goes to the opera with Ronnie. Blocking her need is her character flaw. She's going to marry someone she doesn't love. This character flaw is motivated by her backstory of having an unlucky marriage. At the breakfast table scene in the end, she admits the need is more important to her than the goal. Home Alone. This is the first time I think somebody's talked about Home Alone in this. Moonstruck. James says Moonstruck. That's a Cher movie. Oh, Sable says, oh, by the way, the mentions from yesterday that I was disappointed I didn't comment on that. But You've Got Mail is a better film than Sleepless in Seattle. Yeah, I conflated those in my mind yesterday as I was reading that. I don't know that I've seen Sleepless in Seattle then, because I was thinking about You've Got Mail during those sections until it came to the thing about something about a radio. And I was like, I don't think that was in that movie. Oh, wait, I think it's a different one. In Home Alone, Kevin strives to protect the house and himself from the wet bandits. That's the main action plot. The emotion plot, he needs his family's acceptance, his mother's in particular. 2 flaws block him. 1, he's a brat. 2, he's incompetent. He can't even tie his shoelaces. Those are subplots. The first flaw hooks the parents on the audience. The first flaw hooks the parents in the audience. He becomes a son who learns to appreciate his mother and family. Oh, the first flaw hooks the parents in the audience who are watching. So the parents who are watching get hooked in because he's a son who comes to learn and appreciate his mother and family. The second flaw hooks the kids. He becomes competent when fighting the adult bandits. This is a coming-of-age subplot. That's interesting. There's 2 subplots that speak to different parts of the audience. That's really interesting. So he's got 2 problems. He's incompetent. He's brat and he's incompetent. So the first plot hooks the parents in the audience. They become a son who learns to appreciate his mother's family. The second flaw hooks the kids because it's a coming of age story. I don't like that. The mother's goal is to get home. Her need and her flaw are similar to those of the son. In fact, they are mirrors of each other. Another subplot. Oh, that's interesting. So the mother has got to get home. Her need and flaw are similar to those of his son. In fact, they are mirrors of each other. That's interesting. Another subplot involves the man with the shovel who wants to become reconciled to his son. It's not hard to see that this whole underlying theme of this flick is family reconciliation. What story is it that talks about Finding Nemo? It might be in here, Finding Nemo with Drake. That if the subplots are all hitting the same theme, that works best. So in this case, all of these different subplots, the Kevin, the mother, and the man with the shovel, it's all about family reconciliation. So all of the subplots hit that theme. My best friend's wedding. Juliana wants to break up her best friend's wedding, but needs to accept it and let her life go on. Kramer versus Kramer. The goal, custody. The need, to be a loving father. In this screenplay, the goal and need oppose each other, creating a crisis. Ted Kramer, Dustin Hoffman, loses custody in a court battle and wants to appeal. His attorney tells him it'll cost you $1,500. No, $15,000. No problem. Ted wants to go ahead. You'll have to put Billy on the stand. Well, to put Billy on the stand could deeply hurt him. Ted loves him too much. He chooses to give up custody rather than hurt the child. He overcomes his selfishness and abandons the goal of custody. Here's another way to look at this. Think of yourself as the next great screenwriter creating this story from scratch. You know the story is going to be about Ted Kramer becoming a father, learning to love his son. So you, the writer, give Ted goals, behaviors, and desires that are flawed. You give him a main goal of gaining custody because you know it will eventually contrast with what he really needs, which is to unselfishly love his son. So Ted's goal in the story is flawed. Seeking custody is not the best way to love his son or satisfy his inner drive to be a father. In the end, he becomes a father by giving up custody, by giving up the goal. In The Wizard of Oz, the main goal is Kansas. The need is to realize there's no place like home. In the story, the goal is and the need, the goal are in harmony. The goal and the need are in harmony with each other. Pretty Woman. Two prostitutes need love. Edward could be characterized as a business prostitute. Their behavior does not harmonize with their need. In the end, they give up their old ways and thus they fill their need. They grow. One of my favorite comedies is Some Like It Hot. Joe, Tony Curtis, posing as a millionaire, uses sugarcane Kolatsky, Szynski, or that's not Kolatsky, I don't know how you, Marilyn Monroe. He's after her body, but he needs to love her in the full sense of the word. Sugar's goal is to marry a millionaire. She chases after Joe because he thinks he's one. Her unconscious need, however, is to marry for love. Jerry and Juno. Let's skip down here. Jerry Maguire wants a big contract for his only client, Rod. In the process of working with Rod, he manages to accomplish his mission and even find intimacy with his wife. Let's take a closer look at this story since it has not one but two flaws and two growth arcs. Naturally, the flaws are related. Action story, external journey. Emotional story, internal story. Good morning, PH. Action story, external journey. Emotional story, internal journey. This is Jerry Maguire. Flaw, self-doubt. Flaw, can't find love and be intimate. Catalyst, client suffers in hospital. Meets woman who believes in him. Big event, fired. Goes on a date. Midpoint. Jerry accuses Rod of playing without heart. Rod accuses him of marrying without heart. Emotionally proposes marriage. Crisis in both. After refusing contract, Rod is apparently injured. Wife separates from Jerry because he doesn't love her. Showdown. Rod plays well, gets interviewed, and gets big contract. Showdown. Jerry returns to his wife. Realization. At the two interviews, Rod recognizes Jerry. Jerry has to fulfill his mission, no longer doubts himself. He wants to be with his wife. Show me. Oh, yes, that was Show Me the Money. Yes. God, it's been a long time since I've seen that one. But yes. The screenplay Juno focuses on relationships. Even the action story involves a close relationship between birth mother and adoptive mother. In fact, both storylines blend to show Juno coming of age to some degree. Juno is independent and intelligent, but somewhat immature and maybe a little too smart for her own good. The pregnancy, the catalyst, and the big event is a bit overwhelming. In fact, she confesses to her dad that I have no idea what kind of girl I am. The action story involves what to do about the pregnancy. She tries an abortion clinic, but decides on adoption. She chooses Vanessa Loring as the adoptive mother and shows her full commitment by bringing her ultrasound pictures. But Mark seems a bit too friendly with Juno, and Vanessa is a bit too uptight. Is this going to fall apart? The crisis is when Mark leaves Vanessa. What will Juno do? In the end, she gives Vanessa the baby. The note written on the back of the Jiffy Lube bill adds a nice touch. The emotional story is the love story, which is also kicked off by the pregnancy. What is Juno going to do about the father? At the midpoint, we see that both she and Bleecker miss each other, but the quarrel puts the relationship in question, the crisis. After the conversation with Dad, in which he unintentionally helps her realize who she loves, she initiates making up with an avalanche of orange Tic Tacs. She confesses her love on the track field. In the process of the above, Juno becomes more mature, in contrast to Mark, who remains rather juvenile. Yeah, he regresses, actually, it seems like. As you can see in this instance, both the action story and the emotion story are relationship bound. That's another great point. If you tie both of these together, Cuba Gooding Jr.'s Oscar acceptance speech for Jerry Maguire is historical. I don't remember this one. Just as memorable, but less meme-tastic, because you can't just shout it out in public. Never stop effing me. Which are both thematic to the conflicts in this book is talking about. The structure of 3 movie classics. Star Wars: A New Hope. And then we got 3. I don't know. Let's see, we'll skip over Chinatown. I don't know that one. So let's do Star Wars and let's do Casablanca. I only just realized that they're shouted out at the top of their lungs in about the same cadence. I might have to watch that one again. Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. Star Wars opens with a war amid the stars. It's exactly the right opening image for this saga. We soon get a sense of the parameters of that faraway galaxy, and it's handled visually, like Luke Skywalker is the central character. Oh, it's handled visually. Luke Skywalker is the central character, even though he arrives late. His backstory is this. Luke's father was once a Jedi Knight who was killed by Darth Vader. Or so he was told. Likewise, Obi-Wan, Darth Vader, Princess Leia, and Han Solo all have backstories. Even though Star Wars is essentially a cartoon on the screen, these backstories give the film a richness that it would not otherwise have. Luke Skywalker wants to become a pilot, but he's stuck on the farm. It's a problem he's always had. Life is in balance. For Luke, the catalyst happens as he tinkers with R2-D2 and accidentally triggers a holographic image of Princess Leia, saying, "Help me, Obi-Wan. You're my only hope." Now Luke has a desire to help the beautiful Princess Leia. He begins the search for Obi-Wan. The big event is when Luke returns home and discovers that his aunt and uncle have been slaughtered. He now joins with Obi-Wan to fight the Empire. He enters a whole new world and is trained by Obi-Wan to join the fight against the Empire. As you can see, the big event is bigger in Luke's life than the catalyst. The catalyst upsets normal life and gets the character moving. At the midpoint, the tractor beam pulls him and his friends into the Death Star. That can be seen as the point of no return. Well, that seems a little bit before the midpoint to me. But yeah, okay, so the point of no return, okay, he's being pulled into the Death Star. I'll take it. I don't know that one. We need I need to watch Chinatown. Let me go over here to my long list of movies to watch. Chinatown. All right, it's on the list now. Classes are taught on it. We need a table talk on Chinatown. Film noir with ironclad writing. I don't know A Touch of Evil either. Huh. Okay, the crisis is the death of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Without his mentor, all looks lost for Luke. This is particularly powerful when the key relationship is Luke and Obi-Wan. That's the dominant emotional through line in this sci-fi action film. There are others between Luke and Han Solo and Princess Leia. The climax or showdown is the battle that leads to the destruction of the Death Star. At the end, we enjoy an award ceremony. This is the realization or acknowledgement that Luke and Han have become heroes. Luke's life is now at a new and higher level of equilibrium. Hitchcock basically learned everything he knew from film noir. All of his films are basically noir. All right, I'm going to skip over Chinatown. I haven't seen it. May have to watch it, though. All right. Meanwhile, back in Casablanca, great movie. Casablanca is considered by many as the best movie ever made and perhaps the best screenplay ever written. The relationship story is about Ilsa, Ingrid Bergman, and Rick, Humphrey Bogart. It's the love story, and in this movie, it's the main plot. The action story is about how Elsa and her husband, Victor Laszlo, finally escape from Casablanca with Rick's aid to help the Allies win World War II. It's the main subplot. In this case, the action story is not driven by Rick's goal. He doesn't have an action goal. Instead, Ilsa has the goal that drives the action story to get her husband out of Casablanca. I've never heard anyone complain this story breaks one of the rules. Does Rick have a flaw? Yes, he's a bitter and cynical isolationist. I stick my neck out for nobody. How did he get that way? His backstory. He once loved Ilsa in Paris, but she left him and disappeared without a trace. Rick has been a walking wounded ever since. What is Rick's unconscious inner need? To put aside his own bitter feelings and help Ilsa and Laszlo escape. In other words, become a patriot. As the movie opens, the city of Casablanca is symbolically portrayed as a huge prison, complete with searchlights and guards, the police, making sure no one escapes. That's the opening image system. The place is corrupt and life is cheap. When the prefect of police, Louis Renault, can't find a criminal, he simply commands his men to round up the usual suspects. That line foreshadows a wonderful moment at the very end. Rick runs a saloon and casino. Before we are 10 minutes into the movie, a man named Ugarte, played by Peter Lorre, asks Rick to hide 2 stolen letters of transit. Think of these as free passes out of prison. This event is the catalyst. Let's see. James says, film noir is a genre that grew out of a French movement to create films that defied conventional storytelling. It's not necessarily great for learning good story practices from, but it's wonderful for seeing how defying the rules can work. Casablanca was being written on set as they were setting up that day's filming. You would never be allowed to make a movie the way Casablanca was made nowadays. Also, Die Hard was... I watched a documentary on how Die Hard was made. And Die Hard was being made in basically the same way as well. I mean, they were just making it up basically as they were shooting each day. The studio suits would have an aneurysm. It was pretty crazy. And that's why there's a plot or an inconsistency in the story, like when the bad guys get out of the truck. Because later there's going to be an escape vehicle in the truck or something like that. And it's not in there because they hadn't thought of that yet as they were shooting the first part of the scene. Casablanca is noir. It set out to break the rules. Maltese Falcon, Chinatown, Angel Heart, etc. I'd argue that noir was so successful that the way it defies convention have now become the standard. Later, after we get the letters of transit from Ugarte, later Ilsa enters Rick's place and recognizes the piano player. She says, "Play it, Sam." Sam recognizes her and tells her that she's bad luck to Rick, but plays as time goes by anyway. Then Rick enters and tells Sam, "I thought I never told you to play that." And he sees Ilsa. Ouch, the wound. His angry look and the entire scene imply there's a lot of history between these two people. That's the big event. It's so big that no one dares leave the movie theater for popcorn again until the movie's over. That night, Rick drinks and recalls how Ilsa loved and left him in Paris. This is the flashback to the backstory. Notice that the flashback is motivated. The audience is dying to find out what happened between these two. And the flashback ends with a mystery. Why did she leave him? What moves the present day, which moves the present day story forward? After the flashback in present time, Ilsa comes to Rick to tell him what happened in Paris, but he's so drunk and abusive she leaves. The next day, Rick tries to make up, but Ilsa tells him she is married to the famous Nazi fighter Victor Laszlo, and she was married to him even in Paris. Slap. This is the midpoint for the relationship story, and it deepens Rick's bitterness. A moment later, Ilsa learns that Rick has 2 letters of transit. This is the midpoint for the action story. Ilsa must get the letters of transit from Rick. It's the only way she and her husband, Victor Laszlo, can escape from the Nazis. One night, Rick returns to his room, and Ilsa is waiting for him. She pleads with him for the letters of transit, but he will not give them to her. He's getting even with her. Finally, she pulls out a gun. He says, go ahead and shoot. You'll be doing me a favor. But can Ilsa shoot him? She can't, and her crisis passes. Rick realizes that she must still love him. They have their moment together. She says she can never leave him again. This is a wonderful romantic moment, and it doesn't feel like the crisis at all, but it is. We'll see why. Regarding film noir, I would disagree, mostly because the central pillar of noir is an unlikable, virtually irritable protagonist. That's still not standard, but it shouldn't be. Unlikable, but not unrelatable. You don't think an anti-hero is standard now? No. But it did teach a rather stuffy, stiff industry how to effectively break the rules. There are entire swaths of filmmaking history where anti-heroes were so ubiquitous that your regular old protagonist was almost the exception to the rule. Relatable, rootability, and likable are all different. I chose the words as I meant them. Anti-heroes can still be likable and rootable. They generally are. They should be. Ilsa says, I don't know what's right any longer. You'll have to decide for both of us, for all of us. Please allow me to translate this. Rick, there are 3 key people in this movie and only 2 letters of transit. You have to decide who gets the letters of transit. I'm just the love interest. That's why I don't know what's right any longer. But you're the central character, and that person has to be the most active character in the final act. Therefore, you must make the crisis decision as to who leaves Casablanca for both of us. For all of us. That's a good point. So, yes. So, Rick becomes active by making this choice. Rick says, all right, I will. So this positive romantic moment forces Rick to make a crisis decision. But we don't know what for sure that decision is. That creates suspense. At the airport, we have the showdown. Rick shoots the Nazi major and makes sure that Ilsa and her husband escape. He abandons his goal in favor of what he needs. Correct. He does not get what he wants, but he gets what he needs. This is a classic movie where he needs to get in action. He wants Ilsa. He wants to be in love, but he needs to get his butt back in action. And so that's what he does at the end. As the police arrive, Rick expects to be arrested by Louis. But Louis is inspired by Rick. Louis says to the police, Major Strasser has been shot. He then exchanges glances with Rick. Will he arrest Rick? He says, round up the usual suspects. That pays off the earlier foreshadowing. Good morning, JDN, JDM. I'm having terminological issues in the comments, I see. A moment later, Louis observes, well, Rick, you're not the only sentimentalist. You're not only a sentimentalist, you become a patriot. That's the moment of realization. Rick is reformed to overcome his flaw. He's no longer an isolationist. He sacrifices what he loves most, Ilsa, and gets involved in the fight. In other words, he sacrifices his flaw for 2 things, a higher value and Ilsa, the relationship. We'll always have Paris. The wound is healed. The movie plays at another, more philosophical level. Rick is a symbol of an American that does not want to get involved in the war, but that makes sacrifice and eventually does. Oh, also a good point. Sable says, and that gave us another fantastic movie based on that line of dialogue. Ah, yes. We'll always have Paris. You got to have heart, relationships. We often look at movies in terms of individual characters, but the relationships those characters have with each other are vital. I think of the key relationship or dominant character or the inner emotional journey as the heart of the story. We can certainly see that's the case with Casablanca. That's what your story is about. In the deep sense. The Usual Suspects is a wonderful script. In fact, the Writers Guild of America rated it The 35th best screenplay ever. The movie is well acted and won awards. However, with all that movie had going for it, it only made $23 million domestic gross at the box office. Perhaps one reason is it doesn't have heart. The dominant relationship is between Verbal and the customs agent, and there's not much going on in the emotional terms. The movie is rather intellectual in that regard. It appeals to the mind, but not as much to the heart. I also agree with that. Oh, The Usual Suspects. No, I know. Man, I remember the first time watching Casablanca. I know, same way. I was blown away by how much dialogue from that film has become everyday vernacular. It's true. Thank you. Yeah, grab. Thank you, Stray. Hey, if you need a coffee, one of the cultist coffee mugs, I still have a few left, and they're over there on the Raven Keep store. I think I agree with this. I agree with what probably the issue with that movie is. I love The Usual Suspects, but I think he's right in diagnosing that it doesn't. It doesn't have the same emotional hit that it probably should if it was going to become a wildly popular film. You know, one thing I want to do, I with Casablanca, one thing that drives me crazy about it is when you're, especially in the like opening half of the movie or opening third of the movie, how many times people order a drink and don't finish it. I want to count. We need like a running count on that because it drives me crazy. Like they'll sit down at the table, order some drinks, and then stand up and then go over to the bar and get another drink and not finish it, and then go over to another table and get another drink. The lesson we take from Casablanca is have no plan. Write your script 5 minutes before filming. King Kong, on the other hand, has a big heart, literally. Anne and Kong are the heart of the story, even though neither is the central character. We care about both characters. I realize that special effects help this movie, but the heart of it that makes the original and the most recent King Kong films tick. I realize the commercial appeal does not necessarily equal artistic quality. That's a separate issue. I'm pointing out that screenplays with heart might have a better shot in the script marketplace than those without it. World Trade Center, focused on the relationship, did more than twice the business of United 93, focused on an event. Both are based on the 9/11 tragedy. And Juno more than doubled the gross of No Country for Old Men. The two were released within a month of each other. Obviously, there are many reasons for a film's commercial success. I understand that the comparisons above are completely unfair, but could one reason at least that one film did better than the other is that it had more heart. I think that even Ryan, up in the air, would agree that relationships are important, are more important than he once thought. And it's easy to see how the heart of a beautiful mind carries that story. The central character chooses a life over an imaginary life, real life over imaginary life, because of the love of his wife. And I'm sure that Bertie and Lionel from The King's Speech would say it's all about the relationship. I noticed in Little Miss Sunshine that the 6 main characters are paired. We actually have 3 couples, Frank and Dwayne, Grandpa and Olive, Richard and Cheryl. Do you think that helps move the story along? I don't know, Little Miss Sunshine. My suggestion for your consideration is this. Keep in mind the idea of heart and relationships as you work through your emotional story. And in terms of character goals, desires, and needs, don't just think in terms of what your character wants, but what she wants from others. It's important to develop the relationship as it is to develop the character. Relationships can have arcs just like a character can. Let's highlight this. Keep in mind this idea of the heart and relationships as you work through your story with emotional storytelling. And in terms of character goals, desires, and needs, don't just think in terms of what your character wants, but what she wants from others. It's just as important to develop the relationship as it is to develop a character. A relationship can have an arc just like a character can. Absolutely. Sable once made Kong cry. Sable says, one thing that bothers me about Casablanca is in the one scene where Rick is outside and it's pouring rain, and the next scene he's totally dry. Oh, I'll have to look for that one. Other than that one continuity error, it's a perfect film. Up Where We Belong. Consider the movie Up. It's the relationship Carl once had with Ellie that motivates his actions. Certainly, early in the story, we see how she inspires him, how their opposite traits became complementary. Visually, she's connected with the house and the things in it. The action story is driven by the goal to take the house to Paradise Falls, where the relationship story with both Ellie and Russell is driven by the unconscious need to let go of the past, have a new adventure, and connect with people again. I haven't seen Up. The plot. Up until now, we've discussed the action plot, the external journey, and the emotion plot, the internal journey. The verb, plot is the structure of action and emotion. The verb to plot refers to a creative process that uses character development and story structure to line up the main events of the story into an interrelated sequence. When all the plotting is over, you end up with the main plot and several subplots. Therefore, plot comprises the important events in a character's story. The word plot and structure are often used interchangeably. We don't use that simultaneously here. The word plot and structure are often used interchangeably, but we certainly don't. We talk about plot being, the series of events, but the structure is different from that. Plot grows from a character because everything starts with a character that has a goal. Since the goal is opposed, the character takes action. Will resulting conflicts culminate in a crisis? Will she win? Will he lose? Will he grow? Will she decline? The answers to these questions determine the kinds of plot that you're writing. There are basically two kinds of stories: goal-driven stories and character-driven stories. In goal-driven stories, the focus is primarily on the character's goal and the action, the spine of the story. In character-driven stories, the focus is primarily on character dynamics, a need, a key relationship, the heart and the emotion of the story. The heart and emotion of the story. First, let's take a look at some examples of goal-driven stories, that is, stories in which the goal is more prominent than the inner need. Up is not Pixar's best film by a long shot, but the opening 5 minutes are searing filmmaking. It's definitely worth a watch. I do have Up over here on this. We don't. I think it's the differentiation is important. I do too. Talking about the difference between plot and structure. Oh, really? All I've seen of Up is that, well, I bet I can find that on YouTube. All I've seen of Up is the opening part, and it's perfect. You don't really even need the rest of the film. It's a bummer, but not every story needs a happy ending. Let's see. So the character wins. In this plot model, the character strives for a goal and wins. The happy ending. We're just talking about happy endings. So here we got right here, talking about that. The happy ending, very simple and very common. Examples include Slumdog Millionaire, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, Wonder Woman, Independence Day, Rocky. Rocky achieves his goal of going the distance. Die Hard, Avatar, 42, The Fugitive, Men in Black, all of them. The Silence of the Lambs, Rudy, National Treasure, and The Karate Kid. In Saving Private Ryan, Captain Miller achieves his goal, even though he dies. The character loses. With this plot, a moral victory of some kind often results despite the failure of a very sympathetic character. Spartacus fails to achieve his goal for the slaves and is crucified, but he sees his wife and child escape for freedom. If you're writing a downer ending, I recommend you provide something sweet to make the bitter go down more easily, as in Spartacus. All right. I recommend you provide something sweet to make the bitter go down more easily, such as in Spartacus. May have to reevaluate Spartacus too. Oh, if somebody says something about not chasing the squirrel, they're referring to Up and the very funny character of Doug the dog. Okay. I haven't heard that. I may need to watch that. If the first 5 minutes, I still, like I said, I still love the first 10 minutes, actually. First 10 minutes of How to Train Your Dragon. The first 10 minutes of How You Train Your Dragon is like a perfect intro to a film, starting on action, delivering you everything you need to know just as you need to know it. And Brianna's big on that. Thelma and Louise never get to Mexico, but in the attempt, they achieve a certain freedom, and the point is made. There's meaning in their tragic end. In Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, Everett, George Clooney, needs to get his wife back, and there's not much of a moral victory either. No, never gets his wife back, and there's not much of a moral victory either, except he has a job with the governor, and that ain't bad in Depression-era Mississippi. Other examples are Braveheart, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, From Here to Eternity, The Mission. Here, they flat out lose, and JFK, the Jim Garrison character played by Kevin Costner. In Avengers Affinity War, half of the life of the universe disintegrates. There's no moral victory. Yet. The character sows the seeds of their own destruction. What goes around comes around. Examples include The Lady Killers. So this is another type. The character sows the seeds of their own destruction. The Lady Killers, Frankenstein, Dangerous Liaisons, Moby Dick, Glass, and Scream. In Episode 3 of Star Wars, Revenge of the Sith, the Emperor molds Anakin Skywalker into Darth Vader. In Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, it is Darth Vader who kills the Emperor. The following plot models seem more focused on character dynamics. The following plot models seem more focused on character dynamics and on the emotional story. What are we doing here? Oh Brother, Where Art Thou left me cold. But most of the Coen brother films do that. Yeah. I want to say that I didn't get, I don't think, I know I've tried to watch that at least twice. Because, yeah, and everybody says, oh, it's the Odyssey and all of that. I don't know that I've finished it. I know I've tried to watch it, maybe a couple of times, but for some reason it wasn't grabbing me like other things. The character grows up by doing the right thing. Here, the character is about to do the wrong thing, but transforms into someone who overcomes his or her flaw and does the right thing. This is very popular everywhere. In Casablanca, Rick wants to get even with Elsa. In the end, he does the right thing and helps her and her husband escape. Charlie, Tom Cruise, in Rain Man wants his inheritance. In the end, he tears the check up and does the right thing for his brother. Let's call this the change of heart plot. An ideal example is An Ideal Husband, in which at least 3 characters grow by doing the right thing. Other examples include Hitch, Gran Torino, Emma, Up, On the Waterfront, A Beautiful Mind, both John Nash and his wife, Alicia. My Best Friend's Wedding, Les Miserables, Jerry Maguire, Saints and Soldiers, Scent of a Woman, Big, Green Book, Crazy Rich Asians, An Officer and a Gentleman, Groundhog Day, and Schindler's List. Romantic comedies usually fit this plot model because one or more of their lovers gives up something, the flaw or the goal, for the other. In Pretty Woman, both characters give up their careers. In Some Like It Hot, the lovers stop using each other. Midnight Run is a love story without the romance. Both Jack Walsh, Robert De Niro, and Jonathan Mardukas, Charles Grodin, give up their goals for each other in the end. The character grows up. Big Is such a great movie. Oh, Sable says, there are certain filmmakers that seem to love, that everyone loves, that I just don't connect to. Coen Brothers and Tim Burton are two standouts. I can't stand Tim Burton. I love the Tim Burton's Batman, and I have a huge... at the time, I didn't like the follow-up. Like, that's a weird movie. The one with the Joker, Batman Returns. Man, that movie shows, though, if you just turn Tim Burton loose, you get Batman Returns. And I have a lot of love for that movie now. In fact, I need to watch that movie again. It was a long, that's not one that you just take kids to. Like, hey, it's Batman. So there is some stuff of Tim Burton's that I really like. I mentioned a few comments up that a pillar of noir is typically unhappy or emotionally vacuous endings. It's a lesson taught by filmmakers. Not least of which because he ruined Batman in the popular conscious. Oh, Sable says, I hate Tim Burton's Batman. It's so I can't decide whether he wants it to be slapstick or serious, stylistic or realistic. Also, Batman would never just throw people off a clock tower. But yes, Big is fantastic. I remember Big being a large part, like a childhood movie. If we're naming up filmmakers we don't like that others do, I'm happy to offer up Nolan. Well, now here we have another. See, I go back and forth with Nolan because I love the first Batman. Here we go again. I love Nolan's Batman, particularly Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. I mean, especially The Dark Knight. But Nolan has done a series. What was the one that he just did? Like Tenet, I didn't get. Interstellar was one that everybody was saying how great it was. Like Interstellar was so great, so great. And I went and saw it, and I didn't think it was that very great. I thought that was an example. I thought Interstellar was the perfect example of when you're trying to do a real complicated plot, and you've got a really interesting idea. He'll come up with a really interesting idea, but like in Interstellar, he wrote himself into a problem that he didn't understand how to resolve, and he just went forward anyway. So the plot of that movie is a mess to me. We should do a table talk on Batman, and I'll rip it apart. A microcosm of all the problems with the 1989 Batman is when the Joker pulls out a 3-foot-long revolver out of his pants leg and shoots the Batwing down with it. Yes. I agree. That is a problem. But actually, I was reading someplace, or I was watching someplace, that the reason that ended up having to happen because the Joker was actually supposed to have a tank inside one of the floats. So he was supposed to shoot the Batwing down with a tank that was disguised as the float. But then they ran out of a budget for that. So the Joker didn't get the tank. So they had to come up with something else. And yes, they came up with the ridiculousness of the 3-foot-long revolver. Yes, that's a low point in that movie. And shot the Batwing down with it. So that would have made more sense had he had a tank in the float. Oh, Sable loved Interstellar. Wait, I'm thinking about Interstellar. That's the right one I'm thinking about, right? Wait, hold on. Yeah, that's the one with the black hole, right? Yeah. James hated Interstellar. I have seen Dunkirk. See, that one was okay. So Nolan films. I thought Dunkirk was okay. Oh, Oppenheimer. Oh, yeah. Duh. What was the big? I was like, wait a minute. Wasn't there a Nolan film that just came out? So Oppenheimer was good. Tenet. Tenet is again had a great idea. That was the one that was supposed to have this great idea and a really interesting premise, but then it didn't manifest. Dunkirk, I was told to watch again, but I watched it. It was okay. It didn't exactly stick with me. Again, he was trying to do something else with that movie, with the playing different things, lasting different amounts of time, but all playing out during the same movie length. So he has these experimental ideas. Interstellar, yeah, I thought Interstellar ended up being a mess. The Dark Knight Rises was the low point of the Batman trilogy. Inception, I remember liking. Now, Inception was good. So he was writing. That was when Nolan was riding high. We got the Dark Knight, Inception, The Dark Knight Rises. So that was when I was real big on Nolan. And then he had Interstellar, and then Dunkirk, and then Tenet. I loved it because it's hard science fiction up until the end. That's what everybody was talking about. Like, people are leaving their graduate programs to go and study physics because of this movie. I love relativity. Einstein and Interstellar is the most accurate representation of relativity ever put into a movie. Sable says, I think a lot of people don't like Interstellar. Now, to me, it was all about the plot. It was all about the plot. There are things in that movie. We'll have to, I mean, maybe we can go over that at some time. I'd have to watch it again. I would have to watch it again before I go into it. But the problem wasn't the relativity or what he was trying to do with that, that idea. To me, that wasn't the problem. The problem was that the plot was not built. The plot, the way that we use the term plot, the plot was not built in a way that supported that, I thought. So I thought he had a great idea, but didn't know how to actually write it, and got to the point where he just was like, well, I guess I got to make a movie anyway. You also hated Inception. All right, so we got some major disagreement here. Inception blew me away in the theaters. Yeah, I didn't watch it in theaters. I didn't watch it until much later. And it's been a while since I watched it. But I remember taking exception. Interception. So that, yeah, Dark Knight, Inception, Dark Knight Rises. That's when I was riding high on Nolan. I was like, man, I thought he was great. We should do a director discussion on members only stream sometime. Maybe we should, where we look at the whole body of work. That would be an interesting thing to do. Yeah, a director, or you could do the same thing probably with a writer too. So, I mean, sometimes they're the same thing, but like, what is the director's body of work and what are they saying? That would be interesting. Agreement over here on Interstellar. Like, there was, I kept coming up with things on that in Interstellar that would happen. Like, I remember two things. Like, you're talking about hard science fiction. They take off like in a rocket in a very classic way off of Earth. Lots of fire and all of that. But then later they're on that planet and they just have that plane, that extremely high science fiction kind of plane. That's the spaceship that allows them to fly down to other planets and then just take off without having a rocket to get off of it. And then, oh, I was going someplace. Oh yeah, like the broadcasting the message through the black hole or something. By the time you got to the other side of that, you wouldn't have the resolution problem, and you should just be able to communicate with everybody and not. I'd have to watch it again. Doesn't matter. The film where Nolan outran his own capability is Tenet. It's it's just a space plane. Yeah, I know, but the film where Nolan outran his own capability is Tenet. It's cool, fascinating concept, but just doesn't work. Well, that's why I say that Nolan has been lately trying. I guess he kind of changed things up with Oppenheimer and came back in a different direction. But for a while, he was trying ideas, but I don't think he was actually able to write them. And the problem they're up against the entire film in Interstellar is time dilation, not distance. Yeah, I know. But that was also, I thought, yeah, this time dilation is their issue. And yet they never hurry. I'm like, guys, you've got to hurry. All right. I've got things I got to do. I am going to try to get this Christmas Story up and ready on Kickstarter. Or built up on Kickstarter, not launched yet. But I got to get all that going. All right, everybody. I will see you later. Hey, by the way, go over to Dinner and a Board Game. I noticed I can swap out one of the thumbnails. But I'm releasing a Dinner and a Board Game tonight. All right. So check out that. It's it's actually Terraforming Mars. So we're playing Terraforming Mars. So later, everybody.